Good afternoon. I'm going to call to order the Pierce County Council Monday study session for March 10th, 2025. The time is 11 a.m. and all members are present except for Ayala, who's here, Councilmember Ayala. So we'll acknowledge when she gets here. We have a regular agenda here before us. We're going to start with our legislative update. Mr. Taylor, are you going to tee us up for legislative update?
I would be happy to do so. So good morning, council members. As is typical for your Monday study session, we have Mr. Shaw present today to provide you his weekly state legislative affairs briefing. Within your packet, as always, is the watch list for the week, which was updated this morning along with the larger bill information or bill tracking sheet. Mr. Shaw is present and ready to provide his regular briefing. I also know there's been some questions regarding a potential pull from the Rules Committee for a bill that I know is going to be some questions from Mr. Shaw this morning as well. So Chair, with that, I'll turn things over to Mr. Shaw.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shaw.
Welcome to week 9. Little tired. They worked on Saturday. The House did, went till late, and so had to figure out on Sunday what actually happened. Let's just, I guess, get right to it. They're going to be on the floor for the rest, well, through Wednesday. And then at 5 o'clock, they'll stop and we'll go right back to committees. Now on Thursday, the county ferry bill is up for a hearing at 1:30. So it's nice to get that done. It was the first bill heard at the very beginning, and it's almost the first bill heard on the second part. So that's good news. Now, where are some of the other bills we're tracking? Well, kind of going back to what Mr. Taylor referred to, the REIT Airport Flexibility Bill, House Bill 1650, is still in House rules. Now, I appreciate you guys reaching out to some folks, and I myself reached out to the majority leader. I thought, frankly, the bill was going to be coming out based on that interplay. So I'm going to go down today, try to find out why. What we were told last week by a bunch of the county lobbyists, is that they're trying to figure out which bills in the House, which local tax bills they're actually going to move forward, how many tax votes they want to take. We've heard, and again, this is all just things you hear outside the doors of the House, is it could be the property tax revenue bill, 1334, which frankly, I didn't think was going to move, but they said that there's that one, and 2015, which is a local option councilmatic criminal justice sales tax. I believe they've teed up that bill, and that could run today or tomorrow. But it does mean a lot of the other bills. There's a local public health, local option bill that King County was pushing, and they've been kind of told, no, that's going to sit. That's one tax vote too many. And I just don't know if 1650 falls into that category. It's not a tax vote. It's a flexibility. I had no opposition. So I need to do some digging on that one. And so I'll get right on it. There is that larger REIT bill 2027. It's still in House Finance, but it is necessary to implement the budget. And it would give us maybe an option to look at. So I'll see what I can find out and get back to you on that. So they're moving right through. The Senate has been getting their work done between 3 and 4 p.m. and adjourning. They didn't work this weekend, and they've actually passed more bills in the House at this point. Yeah, so that was strange. I think a lot of the angst is starting to move from policy bills to the budget. I've been telling you for a while that the revenue forecast would come out on the 20th because that's when it's technically supposed to come out, but apparently it's going to come out on the 18th. You should probably see the Senate budget on the 19th, so they can get it done before the weekend. So we're getting to that point. There are a couple other bills to mention. The child care bill that I know Councilmember Denson has been working on. That is the Senate bills over in the House, and that's in good shape. And as far as the other major bills, no, it's hard to. The criminal justice bills, we know that 50/60 is the governor's priority, the $100 million for law enforcement. So that seems to be teed up in the Senate. And I do believe that's why 2015 is going to move in the House, because I do see them as being kind of connected. See what this week brings. I don't have much else for you other than on transportation. It kind of gets overshadowed because the operating budget is looms so large because of their deficit. When I talked to the two chairs, I think I probably mentioned this, Representative Fye, he's looking at the 6 years, the $4 billion hole that they have to deal with. In the Senate, talked to Senator Leas, the chair of Senate Transportation. He's looking at a 2-year, just get through this biennium, which means the problem statement is about $1 billion, which means project cuts, but not so much program cuts. So I'm not quite sure on how that meshes or where they'll land on that. And I'll let you know when I do. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the update and your work this weekend. Do I have questions from council members? Councilmember Denson.
Thank you for being here and thank you for all your work so far. It's not so much a question. Councilmember Morel and I talked a bit this morning about the REIT for airports bill. And we would like, if council agrees, to draft a simple letter in support of getting that pulled from rules. I don't know if it will be helpful at all, but it was a request by one of the representatives. So we want to do everything we can to be supportive. And it's such a nice little bill, bipartisan support, you know, and it's helpful for local government. So that's our plan if you don't have any objections.
Oh, Mr. Taylor, towards the end of floor action, what we refer to, they always empty the bucket where they pull a bunch of bills out of rules, get your, hopes up so they can crush them later. I'm hoping it's not the case. We'll see.
All right, thank you.
Are there any concerns or objections with a letter going from the two of you, and they're not a committee, so we don't have to?
Well, we were hoping it could come from the full council
Oh, you
and then
want
we
it?
would talk about it in study session. We could review it in study session tomorrow. Because we've already sent our own letters.
Okay, yeah, if staff thinks we can get one ready for study session tomorrow, okay, they're nodding their heads, so yeah, we'll do that. We'll add that to tomorrow's conversation. Any other legislative questions for Mr. Shaw? So just to make sure that I'm tracking and just in case anyone else is looking at the bill tracker sheet, on the ones where it says dead, but it's only, there's 2 bills listed.
Yeah.
The dead is for the one that's right below or right above, or?
It's usually right above where it says
Okay.
debt. And there are a couple that I noticed, for instance, I had said that the property tax revenue bill 1334 was dead. That's not.
Zombie bills.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
zombie bill. And 1207, which is also on our list. That was a bill that I thought had died. It got pulled off the appropriations at the last minute. Found out, and just to give you a little bit of background, that was a filing fee that the county clerk would impose. Large chunk of it would stay in the county. And then some of it was going to go to fund the archive. It raises about $10 million over a period of time. And I believe the folks who run the general fund saw that and they grabbed it. And I think they're putting it in their pocket for later. So it's not really dead.
Okay. Good to hear, I think. Not sure, maybe.
Let's put it this way. I don't think the archive is going to see any of that money.
Which was not the intent of that because anyways, okay.
Yeah.
For further conversation. Okay, and then my only other question, just, I saw several of the childcare bills that were, and it was, one was dead and the other was, I'm assuming, still alive. So it was like the Senate bill was still moving forward or the House bill. And so are some of our childcare bills, especially the one about other buildings being used, still?
Yes, that's the Senate version, good shape, or
Okay.
in the House.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions? Well, Mr. Shaw, we'll let you head back to Olympia and thank you for your work. Okay. That brings us to item 3, which is review of March 11th council meeting. Ms. Long.
Right, thank you and good morning. This is tomorrow's regular council meeting agenda. We will start with your consent agenda under introduction and scheduling. You have one item and that is our 2025-120. This is authorizing the executive to enter into a one-year contract for publishing legal notices for the county. You'll be referring this to rules and setting the final on this for April 1st. Under C, final action, you have one resolution and that's our 2025-118. And this is confirming the appointment of one new member to the Gig Harbor Peninsula Land Use Advisory Commission, and that's your final. Under D, you do have 5 grants, and we'll be reviewing them in study session today. So I'll just walk through these. I'll just say that all of these are Washington State Department of Transportation grants on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration. These are all submitted by Planning and Public Works. So the first one is CRP 5400. This is a guardrail program, 2026 through 2030. The next one is the high friction surface treatments on Waller Road East. Number 3 is the high friction surface treatments for the Alder Cutoff Road East, Webster Road East, and Orville Road East. Number 4 is CRP 5905. This is Golden Given Road East and 104th Street East intersection. And then finally, you have CRP 5981. This is South Prairie Road East and 214th Avenue roundabout. So we'll talk about those shortly, and Mr. Boki is here to explain those. Moving to section 7, you have 2 proclamations tomorrow. The first is a proclamation of the council and executive proclaiming March 9th, 2025 as Billy Frank Jr. Day in Pierce County. And that was requested by council members Herrera and Yambi. Next is the proclamation of the council and executive proclaiming the week of March 9th through the 15th as Volunteer Recognition Week in Pierce County. And that was requested by council members Ayala, Kruger, and Denson. Moving to section 8, resolutions, you have one, and that's our 2025-117. This is setting the date of an evening District 6 council meeting, and that will be April 9th at 5:30 at the McGavock Conference Center. That's located in Lakewood. Moving to section 9, ordinances, you have one item here. It's O 2025-506. This is declaring certain county-owned personal property. This is an excavator owned by the Public Works Department. Equipment and revolving and rental fund to be surplus and authorizing the sale thereof. This received a due pass at rules on February 24th. And those are your agenda items for tomorrow's regular council meeting.
Thank you. For the record, Councilmember Ayala is here. Are there any questions? Seeing none, and there are no amendments, we'll go to grant reports. Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Chair Hitchin, Paul Boki, council staff. We do, as mentioned by Ms. Long, 5 Highway Administration through WashDOT, and Mr. Clint Ritter, and I believe Ms. Becca Osterhaus are here to answer any of your questions. So the first one we have is the County Safety Program, also known as the Highway Safety Improvement Program. The due date of these applications are March 15th, so they are at the end of this week. The anticipated decision date is September 30th of this year. These are federal direct grants. This is a guardrail program running from 2026 to 2030. However, if the grant is successful, the proposed segments will be placed into a separate CRP of their own. As you know, there is a separate guardrail program at the county level. The requested grant amount is $858,000. And on page 3 of that, you'll see the county guardrail project, what they're proposing here. And by my count, there's 4,635 linear feet of guardrail that will be put in at Ording-Kapowson Highway East, Alder Cutoff Road East in 4 different locations: Rain Ash Drive Northwest, Eustis Hunt Road East, Willacca Drive Northwest, and 2 segments on East Bay Drive Northwest. And so Mr. Ritter is available to answer your questions.
Yes.
Are there questions for Mr. Boki on these 5 grants? Or for staff that took the time to be here? Mr. Ritter, do you have anything to add on behalf of the department?
Nothing to add, Chair Hitchin, but happy to answer any questions. So,
Councilmember Morel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nice to see your name up there, Mr. Ritter.
nice to see you as well. It's been a while.
Yes. Just curious on your Golden Given Road East and 104th Street East intersection. What is your plan on that one?
Yeah, great question. So the plan at that intersection is to install a fully actuated traffic signal. And we did an extensive traffic report as we do always on any intersection improvement project. And the preferred alternative for that particular location was a traffic signal. We did look at a number of other options, including stop controlled, roundabout, et cetera. And the traffic signal really, from a level of service standpoint, from a safety standpoint, and the other big issue at that particular location is it's fairly constrained in right of way. And so the traffic signal would require much less right of way, therefore much less cost than the second primary option that was looked at, which would be a roundabout.
Okay, thank you for that response. And then your other project, your South Prairie Road and 214th roundabout. As I understand, this is a new project. What kind of funding and what is it going to cover? Design, or what are you looking at here?
Yeah, good question. You are correct. It is a new project. We have not done any design engineering on it other than a traffic report, which did do the full traffic analysis. Kind of, as I mentioned, similar effort on Golden Given 104th project. That analysis determined that a roundabout in this case was the preferred option. That was primarily due to the collision history at this particular intersection, and felt that this would really, from a safety perspective, be the best solution to reduce any crash history at this particular location. So we've done the traffic report. We have preliminary cost estimate. This request would be to fully fund this entire project through construction.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to that one. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the questions. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thanks for being here, Mr. Ritter. I just had a quick question in regards to the county guardrail projects. If we have projects that have been suggested or inquiries from constituents in regards to new guardrails or replacement, what's the best way to communicate that to you, and the timing? What's preferred timing for things like that?
Yeah, great question. I would say if there are particular locations you're hearing about, definitely send them to the department. We're happy to add those into our regularly occurring guardrail evaluation process. We have a guardrail priority array and an annual, as you're probably familiar, an annual guardrail program that we seek to address priority locations throughout the county. And that's where these particular locations that are proposed today originate from. But if there are others, we can certainly look at them from they have to be in a warranted location, obviously, due to whether that be a crash history, whether that be a clear zone issue, or other factors. But we're happy to evaluate those. In terms of timing, it really depends on the location. In some instances, guardrail is a fairly, I hate to say easy and straightforward, but in some locations it is, in terms of, no right-of-way impacts, environmental concerns, things like that. And so that can be something that if we were made aware of, let's say the year prior, we could potentially incorporate that into a project in the following year. Other locations that are more have more substantial issues in terms of needing right of way to install the guardrail, or maybe there's environmental permitting concerns. Those generally take longer, so that's something we would need to know generally a couple years in advance to be able to program those in the tip, in the project, get design going, all those issues addressed, and actually get that project to construction.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you for the questions. I think this is more for our staff. Several of these are projects that are not listed in our capital facilities program. If we receive these grants, so we need to go in and actually amend that so they were authorized through our regular business.
Thank you, Chair Hitchin. So within the tip, there is a highway safety improvement program project. It's the programs listed within the transportation improvement program itself. And so these larger projects, you notice a number of these grants are several $1 million in size. If the county did in fact receive those funds and the project isn't currently in the TIP, then the practice would be to list it in the TIP. So whether or not it's necessary to actually receive the funds, that's really a question for Mr. Clint Ritter as far as the granting agency's requirements. But as far as our budgeting and best practices, we would want that included within our 6-year transportation improvement program.
Okay, thank you. And I'm assuming there's no issues with that, Mr. Ritter, because you applied for the funds, so.
Yeah, correct, Chair Hitchin. Mr. Taylor did excellent job as usual describing that process. We would not need to have the project in the tip to accept the award. However, we would to move forward with funding obligation to actually start the engineering. And that's very typical in a lot of these processes, and something that we would be, tracking through the year, and likely, if the timing worked out, we would incorporate any awarded projects in the upcoming 2026 through 2031 tip.
Well, I'm going to hope that we create that work for you by accepting and receiving these grants. So thank you for your work on this. Is there any concerns about having this on our agenda tomorrow? Okay, seeing none, we'll get the little italicized part off the thing saying that we are good with it going forward. Thank you all. That brings us to item number 4, review of our committee agendas. Ms. Long.
Thank you. So this afternoon at 1:30, you do have a public safety committee meeting. There are 2 presentations on this agenda. The first is the Boating Advisory Commission annual report. That will be with the Sheriff's Department. And next is the Sheriff's Department Marine Services Union presentation, also with the Sheriff's Department. Tomorrow, March 11th, beginning at 9:30, you have an Economic and Infrastructure Development Committee meeting. There are 2 presentations or discussion items on this agenda. The first is the Electrification Needs and Availability Panel. You'll have several presenters on this panel: Puget Sound Energy, Tacoma Power, Parkland Light and Water, and also OHOP Mutual Light Company. And then under other business, there is a report. That's the Child Friendly Workplace Report, and that's pursuant to an older resolution, 2023 R 2023-65. At noon is your regular Tuesday study session. In addition to your usual agenda items, you have one highlighted item under Chair's Topics, and that's council member meeting attendance. And then under other business, you have a proposed opioid treatment program. This is the Northwest Integrated Health, and that will be with Ms. Waterland from our office. At 3 p.m. is your regular council meeting. And then a reminder that Thursday, March 13th, beginning at 9 a.m. is the council retreat. That is a special meeting, and it is at the Sprinkler Recreation Center. That agenda will be ready for you tomorrow, and we may have a discussion on that during tomorrow's study session. But Hugh is the point person for that agenda and those items. And that is your meeting schedule for the remainder of this week.
Okay, any questions on this week's meeting schedule? Thank you, Ms. Long. That brings us to item number 5, discussion of administrative items. Mr. Taylor.
So 1 second, Chair, please. All right, thank you. So the only item that I wish to report to the committee the study session this morning is an item I reported to rules earlier today, and that has to do with the recruitment of the human services policy analyst. That recruitment process has been completed. In my capacity as acting chief of staff, I'll be bringing a recommendation for a hire to the Rules and Operations Committee next Monday. So that will include our 2 principal staff hires. And then, of course, the chief of staff decision is still pending. But good news is we're almost across the finish line with those hires. So thank you.
Thank you for the update. Any questions on that? Okay. Seeing none, that brings us to other business. We are going to learn about the proposal for our government affairs program. We're going to have this introduced by Mr. Taylor as well.
All right, thank you. So Jamie Smith, Chief of Staff for the Office of the Pierce County Executive, is present today. Ms. Smith is going to present the executive's proposal for reestablishment of a formal government affairs team within the Office of the Executive. As a reminder, the council appropriated $425,000 for the establishment of the government relations team through the recent supplemental budget. Funding was subject to a proviso. That proviso required the executive to submit a proposal, position descriptions, and an operations plan to the council. That information is in your packet at page 86. I will note that the proviso does not require any subsequent action by the council. It's simply the presentation of the information, which will occur today. So I think Ms. Smith is ready to go. So Chair, with your permission, I will turn things over to Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Ms. Smith, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Jamie Smith, I'm the Chief of Staff to Executive Mello. Good to see you all. Good segue talking about recruiting staff. We are getting very close, hopefully, to being able to recruit the 2 FTEs that this body approved. You can go to the next slide. As Mr. Taylor mentioned, last year, this body approved as part of the budget a proviso that provides $425,000 for 2 FTEs. And so here today, I want to talk a little bit about how we're envisioning those 2 FTEs and talk about the operations plan so you can get a little more insight into how we're thinking about, and we can talk through any questions or ideas you have to make sure that both of these FTEs are appropriately serving and meeting the intent of the funding that you approved and serving all of our offices. Next slide. So just as a reminder, I think many of you have already seen this, with the new executive, we've done a little bit of reorganizing in our office. And this chart gives you a nice overview of how we've divided some of our different roles and responsibilities. The government relations team will be reporting up to me and be part of my team in the executive's office. We're, as you'll hear about in a little bit, between these 2 FTEs, we're really wanting to do local government relations, state and federal government relations. We currently have Andrew Strobel on our team. Many of you know him. He does tribal relations and regional relations. So the idea is that all 3 of these positions will be very complementary to one another. Next slide. So like I mentioned, two positions. The government relations director, will talk a little bit more about this. Very senior level position, going to be our point of contact primarily for our legislative and federal delegation members. A government relations specialist. It's going to be a little bit more of a mid-level person and really help, I hope, be a really effective conduit for work with our local governments. So mayors, unincorporated areas. Next slide. And in your packets, you should have, I provided the classification document so you can get a much better sense of the detailed tasks and responsibilities for each of these. The government relations director, again, I think the main point of distinction, that's going to be the senior level person. They're going to oversee all of our countywide government relations programs and be the point of contact for state and federal. Next slide, the specialist is going to support a lot of that work and be the liaison for our local government entities. You can go to the next slide. The operations plan that you also have in your packet, I think gives a really, I hope gives a good sense for how we think that these two entities will be, these two positions will be able to support our work. So in the operations plan, you'll see essentially while these two FTEs do report to me, the idea is that they're not just providing GR for the executive's office. They'll also be serving all of our departments. They will be serving you. They will also be available to help with our separately elected offices and doing all of the standard things that you think of when you're thinking about government relations, right? They're going to be keeping tabs on what's happening locally in the state legislature and federally. They'll be helping compile reports, making sure that you have good information about what's happening on the policy and budget side of things, helping provide recommendations if there's some kind of action that we need to be taking, helping support whatever kind of government relations work you're wanting to do. So if it's helping put together a letter, gather signatures, organize a legislative breakfast, whatever it is that they can do to help support our work at a countywide level. And then that coordinating aspect, like I said, just being there to help provide whatever staff support any of us need as we're going about our work. Next slide. And then not to repeat myself too much, but a lot of these typical tasks are outlined in the operations plan and in the classification documents that you have. Having, I think, a point of contact between the senior level, the director level with our legislators and our congressional staff, and then having that conduit with our local government, I hope provides like a really good information flow between all of our offices. The government relations director is also going to help oversee our contract lobbyists. So they'll help make sure that as we get ready to renew those contracts and we're tracking that work, if you guys need anything from our contract lobbyists, they can help with that. And yeah, just really being, I think, a big value add. We are the second largest county in the state, and having these extra folks who are helping track a very busy Congress, a very busy legislature, and, our local government folks who obviously look to us for a lot of support. I really hope that these two folks will help bring a lot of value add to our collective efforts. So with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you for the overview, Ms. Smith. Councilmember Morrell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for presenting. Welcome.
Thank you.
I guess my curiosity is, how do you envision our work in DC happening? Lobbying, what is that going to look like?
Yeah, we still have Dale Learn, our contract lobbyist for federal relations. He'll continue to be supporting this. And it is my hope that having the government relations director role will be able to really amplify those efforts. We are just now getting word, for example, about the reconciliation process and the earmark process. Having somebody who can really support Dale in that work and provide regular updates to our congressional delegation, there'll be, I think right now, it kind of feels a little bit like when we have time kind of effort. Dale's really helping lead that. We just don't have a lot of capacity to focus as much as we would like. So very much in concert with us, with all of you and our contract lobbyist.
Okay. And just for a budget understanding, the allocation that we made was just for the two
Mhm.
staffers. So we're still gonna have to pay for contract lobbyists, which is more than we've ever paid before for this
Mhm.
department. So how are we gonna deal with that? Will you bring a proposal forward that says we're gonna hire Dale Learned at 200,000 a year, whatever it is?
Yeah, I think the intent is to continue having our contract lobbyists. They do provide really invaluable assistance. I think as we get to the point of renewing contracts, obviously we may look at what we might do to rescope their work, given the fact that we have two GR folks. So I think the idea is that this supplements and it's not in replacement of. But yeah, the opportunity to take a look at the contracts. I think Mr. Taylor had mentioned that those contracts, at least the federal one, is up for renewal at the end of this year, I believe.
Mr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. That's correct. Both contracts are on, council recalls when the contracts are entered into, they're for a 1-year period, and then they are renewed annually up to 5 times for a total of 5 years. Both contracts are in that renewal period at the end of the year. And the practice has been to bring the renewals to the council for information purposes, so you're aware of it. It's also an opportunity with the renewal to look if there's any changes in the scope of the contract, any additions to the contract. And as Ms. Smith noted, the supplemental budget item to fund these 2 positions is in addition to the funding that the council has already provided for the government relations contracts. Those contracts are accounted for within special projects. And so they're budgeted through the end of this biennium in the fall. When you have that discussion about next biennium, that would be a time to talk about the scope of the services under those contracts. It will line up with the contract extension windows as well. So I'm just indicating support for how Ms. Smith described the intention, as I understand it, by the council's action with the supplemental.
Okay. And follow-up question, Madam Chair, is obviously you're looking at strategery
Mhm.
when some of the, how should we say, lobbyists are being somewhat censured in their organizations due to the new administration. So hopefully we're being smart on how we're looking at our contract lobbyists, especially at the federal level.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the questions. Are there further questions from my colleagues? I'm going to pause, but my question and see if anyone else, but I had a question about federal departments. So like OJJDP, the VA, DOD, some of the ones that we work with a lot, but I really have felt like I don't know who to call when I want to try and talk with one of those organizations. And so it's sometimes Google searches or asking Mr. Taylor or asking Dale Learn, but would they be supporting that kind of work if there was something specific? We'd be able to reach out as council members if there was something going on within our district that they're gonna-
Absolutely. I think the intent is they can be your first point of contact to say, hey, I'm trying to reach somebody in this federal department, and that person can help track down that contact for you.
Okay. And that would be for departments and other electeds and the 7 of us and our staff as well?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for, Councilmember Gruber?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Smith, for all your information. I'm trying to discern or understand more how they would be splitting out their time. I saw that the, not the director, but the specialist would spend time with the different jurisdictions like Drainage District, which I paid specific attention to. And what is the vision on what they would be communicating to those organizations that were listed?
Part of it is just folks knowing that they have a touch point in the executive's office or with county government. If they have a question, then our local partners know that they have a point of contact if they need to reach somebody. If there is something that's happening of interest in the state legislature or federally, but probably the state legislature, or even among the council, just to provide that heads up, some kind of awareness. It really is just having a little bit closer care and feeding of our local partners and our hyper local partners, because we don't have the capacity to do that right now. So more than anything, I think it's just the relationship building and making folks know that if they need something, they have a person that they can call. And if we hear of things and we have information that we think would be helpful to pass down, that we will be happy to do so, and that we have a way to proactively communicate with folks.
I'm thinking in relating this into like today's terms, which I have an issue at Spanaway Lake.
Yeah.
And so that is also dealing with the state reps. So would this government relation liaison work with me or the council member, whatever district has an issue going on, to communicate with the state?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's,
Exactly. So they would be able to help figure out who needs to be part of the conversation. Again, that coordination role, just having somebody to help make sure that there's if you need information from a department, if those folks want to have a direct conversation with somebody in our office, that person can play that role.
interesting. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for
And I just to add on to that, I think, that's the vision and the thinking. And then, of course, as folks come on board, if we need to at any point reassess how that process works, we're doing the same thing just generally in our office. Anytime you go through a reorg, right, you try to figure out what works well. And then when things get a little clunky, is there something that we need to do to fix it? So that's the vision for now. But, the idea is making sure folks feel like they have a very easy way to find somebody in our office and an easy way to get information, and that these folks help fill that role.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the questions. Any further questions? Well, seeing none, thank you, Ms. Smith, and we look forward to them coming before the council to introduce themselves and
Me
see
too.
what we can do.
Thank you.
Is there any other business before the commit or in study session? No? Okay, seeing no other business, we are adjourned.